Hi everyone, today I'm going to show you a knot that you can use to join two pieces of rope together. So most often you'd want to do this if you want to extend the length of your rappel so that the two ropes combined can reach the bottom of the crag or your next belay ledge. So there's a fair amount of controversy over this about which knot is the best knot to use and the safest knot to use. The knot I'm going to show you is called the flat overhand, otherwise known as a thumb knot or an offset water knot or the Gyro death knot. And I'll explain what that is in a moment. But all the flat overhand is basically, well, it's an overhand just with two strands of rope. So got my loop here, just going to pass the rope through. And notice how I've allowed for a fair amount of tail. Pull that tight. And with this knot, it's particularly important to make sure it's well dressed. So I'm going to pull each strand really snug in all possible combinations here, just to make sure that it is well dressed. And there we have our flat overhand. And notice here I've got, well, just a little bit over a foot of tail on each end. And that's just for safety reasons. The reason is that when the knot is under a huge amount of load, when it capsizes, it tends to suck a little bit of tail inward. So I'm just leaving more tail than is needed, just in the instance that, if this knot does come under pressure, there's absolutely no chance of failure, or a minimal chance of failure, I should say. So you may be thinking at this point, well, this is so simple. How can I possibly trust this in a rappel situation? Well, studies have shown time and time again that this knot is absolutely strong enough to withstand a great amount of force. The average amount of force that this knot can take before it capsizes is about 1,500 pounds of pressure. At least that's what the research has shown us. And even when it does capsize, the knot has a tendency to kind of roll over and actually get tighter. So it certainly is good enough for a rappel situation, and the maximum force you could expect to encounter in a rappel is, 600 pounds of pressure, even less than that really in reality. But, we have to think about the worst case scenario here. And again, even when it does capsize, it sucks in a little bit of tail, so that's why we've just left, more than is necessary here. So, why would you use this knot as opposed to any other knot? Well, you could go for a double fisherman's, that is the knot of choice for a lot of climbers, but yet the flat overhand is more popular. The reason is the double fisherman's has a tendency to get really unbearably tight when under load and is an absolute pain to untie, whereas the flat overhand is a lot easier. In the same kind of way, the fisherman's is kind of in axis, so it's you have the two knots kind of pounding against each other, and the rope is kind of in one straight line, whereas the flat overhand is kind of what we call off axis. And basically what this means is that if you happen to be retrieving your rope and the rope has to kind of run along terrain and rocks and things as you're pulling it towards yourself, the fisherman's, because it's in line with itself, has a tendency to get caught. It's very easy to get snagged in a constriction and so on, whereas the flat overhand, being off axis, can sort of just roll over and it doesn't get caught or it doesn't have a tendency to get snagged, is what I'm trying to say. So a lot of climbers prefer that, and of course if your rope does get caught and you can't retrieve it, then you're in a lot of trouble, especially if it's a multi-pitch rappel. The other advantage is that the flat overhand is so easy to tie. You've seen it on this video. It's just an overhand. Incredibly hard to tie wrong. So if it's dark, if it's raining, whatever, you need a knot that you can comfortably tie and reliably tie. And the double fisherman's, while not terribly complicated, I can imagine it going wrong. If there's a lot of distractions around, and if you tie a double fisherman's wrong, then you're going to have a bad time. But the flat overhand, I suppose it's kind of foolproof to an extent. So as you can see, it's got a lot of great qualities. So you may be wondering, why is it called a Gyro death knot? And basically this is a myth that's been debunked so many times. But basically when climbers from the United States started coming over to Europe, they saw this knot and incorrectly identified it as being the cause of many climbing accidents, because back in the States they used to use this a lot to secure hay bales and things like that, but they had never seen it used in a climbing scenario before. So they coined the term Euro death knot, and it's just kind of stuck around as a long-running joke. But it is certainly not a death knot. It is a very good knot to use. I would personally recommend it over the fisherman's. I would definitely recommend it over the rethreaded figure of 8, because that has led to so many fatalities during its time, because it's just not strong enough and will capsize under lower loads. And it's definitely better than a square knot for the same reasons. So there is your flat overhand. If you've not used it before, do some research on it and you'll see that it's perfectly acceptable. I hope you found this video helpful.